Hi, this is Robert again, and this is a video I've been trying to do for months. There's a little history with this video. The first three iterations of this video were plagued with problems, and part of it was my old computer was dying. I think the drivers may have been bad too, but I always had problems with the video. Anyway, I have a new computer now, and I'm going to remake this. But I grew up listening to classical music. My mom had actually studied opera at the conservatory in Philadelphia. I don't know if that means anything these days, but she would sing opera arias while washing the dishes. So I grew up with the sound of classical music playing all the time. And you can't help but love it. I mean, if you've grown up watching Bugs Bunny, you probably have heard a lot of classical music pieces and never even knew it. But and we may reference that on one of these. I think I actually have Leopold playing on one of these. Is this Leopold? Yep, Stokowski. Leopold Stokowski playing Beethoven. But yeah, let's get right into it. In my opinion, the easiest, I wanted to make a video for folks who are curious about classic music but know nothing about it and wanted a safe entree into what may be the most common and most accessible pieces. And in my opinion, the man to go to is the genius himself, Ludwig van Beethoven, and his symphonies, especially his later ones. And I actually have two versions of the same thing here. These are CDs, but they're a combination of what were two phonograph albums. Um, and it's the classic Fifth Symphony and Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, which I consider to be probably his best, or at least it's my favorite of his. Uh, the Fifth Symphony has the classic bum 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 bum, Fate knocks at the door theme. You've heard all that, I'm sure. The Seventh Symphony is it's been called the apotheosis of the dance, and it does move like a dance. It's very rhythmic, flows along. Like all Beethoven, it has a very strong melody and rhythmic drive, yet it also has some of his playful nature in it as well. But this is a Deutsche Grammophon disc done by a man named Carlos Kleber, and he's a wonderful conductor. Conductor basically is a man who has studied music extensively. Usually he's an accomplished musician in one way or another himself. But a symphony, in the old days there weren't conductors. The concertmaster, the first violinist, would lead the orchestra, and they'd do their thing and that would be it. The conductor came along as one man with a vision, uh, who had hopefully more insight into what the composer originally intended the piece to sound like. And so he's basically interpreting it and playing the orchestra, or coaxing the orchestra to follow that vision. Anyway, Carlos Kleber is just a wonderful conductor. A lot of people tend to make Beethoven kind of stuffy and stately, and they can make it boring. Kleber keeps the pace uh, moving, but not too fast, and just masterfully done. Everything's well done. Uh, Leopold Stokowski is another master, and this is his version. This is of London recordings of the Fifth Symphony and the Seventh Symphony. I, London had an interesting deal in that they would. This sounds different from the Deutsche Grammophon, and I will be talking sonics on a lot of these. Deutsche Grammophon used a crossed mic technique where there'd be two microphones and maybe a few sweeten things up, but the main recording was done on two mics held over the orchestra. London would do a multi-mic setup, like a rock recording almost, or a pop album, where they'd mic each section of the orchestra. And it kind of puts you into the orchestra. It can be a little distracting, but it's an interesting recording from a fidelity standpoint. And Stokowski does a damn good job on Beethoven as well. So that's the Fifth and Seventh Symphonies. I would be remiss not to mention the Pastoral Symphony, number 6. This is the one, it's probably Beethoven's most accessible symphony. Pastoral, what's the subtitle? Feelings on Entering the Countryside. And that's basically, it's like a visit to the country, and you go out and you have a picnic, and a thunderstorm approaches, everyone runs off, and then when the weather clears, everyone comes back out, and the folks have a country dance at the end. But it's just a wonderfully melodic piece. If you've ever seen Walt Disney's original Fantasia, half of Fantasia is Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony. The whole thing's in there. But this is a laser light digital recording. These were budget CDs that sold in supermarkets, and they mainly had like Eastern European and Russian orchestras playing, but they were all digital recordings, so the fidelity was pretty good. It's not a bad rendering of the Pastoral. The Pastoral it's hard to mess it up. It's just such a straightforward piece. So more Beethoven. He did all kinds of music, but two of his more famous pieces are his sonatas for violin and piano, the Spring Sonata and the Kreutzer Sonata. The sonata format has 4 movements, and basically it's like a symphony that way. But these are like little symphonies with only 2 instruments. And these are known for their fun pieces. They're quirky and upbeat, and they move along. They're happy music, and just can't recommend them enough. But Kreutzer was a patron of Beethoven, so he dedicated the piece to them, and you'll see that on a number of classical pieces. These guys had to find, they didn't just have money handed to them usually. They had to curry favor with kings or princes or other wealthy people to get commissions for pieces. And so, whatever they could do to make a living. But these are great pieces. So many people cover this that I doubt you could find a bad version, but it's great. And we'll keep going here. Beethoven's Emperor Concerto is an amazing piece. Concerto is a full orchestra playing with a solo instrument, be it a piano or a violin or cello or whatever. But the Emperor is this powerful piece. It's as strong as any of Beethoven's symphonies. And this is the first essay CD that I'm showing you. In the 50s, 60s, RCA came out with their Living Stereo series of LPs, and they recorded a lot of great musicians doing great pieces. And it's so great that whoever owns RCA now, I'm not sure, is it I don't know the label, BM, I don't know. But the stereo label has reissued the Living Stereo pieces. They've been remastered and issued on high resolution SACDs, and they sound just gorgeous. The SACD has a softer, more natural treble than your regular CDs do. You have to have a special player to play them, but they're worth the effort, I think. And these are usually a bargain. I picked up a bunch of these on Amazon for like 12, $14 a piece. Okay, and I promise this is the last Beethoven, but this is also a transition because these are Beethoven's solo piano sonatas, and they're quite famous. The most famous is the famous Moonlight Sonata, which is very calm and peaceful, but some of them are quite energetic. The Appassionata, the Pathetique, and the Léadu are all very well written, energetic pieces. They're being played here by a man who I grew up listening to. He was my mom's favorite pianist, and he's mine. His name was Arthur Rubinstein. He lived to be 90 years old, played in, right up to the end. I got to see him as a little kid at the Bayfront Center in St. Pete, Florida, play, and he was amazing. Little wizened old man came out and just poured out this amazing music. But anyway, Rubinstein is known for the way he conceptualized the music. It was so great. It came out sounding statelier and more epic than it even was. I don't know how to say it, but he does a great job here on the Beethoven sonatas. But what he's most famous for is Chopin. And I grew up listening to Rubinstein's Chopin recordings. And this is kind of a nice little sampler. This still has the RCA Victor logo on it, but it's like a greatest hits of Chopin being played by Rubinstein. But most artists tend to make Chopin they tend to make him sound rather soft and effeminate. And Rubinstein was actually of the Chopin school. He was taught by someone who was taught by a student of Chopin. And he he gives the life and energy back into the music and makes it very powerful. And I like the emotion in Chopin, but he also has some great melodies. And this has the classic Polonaise in A flat, the heroic Polonaise, but it's also got the Minute Waltz and a lot of other things. I also like the Ballade in G minor, number 1. But it's hard to go wrong with Rubinstein Chopin. Oh, yes. Lest I forget, sorry about that, if you want to dive in deep, there's a box set of 8 CDs of Rubinstein playing Chopin. This is almost everything that's left of his recordings. He did his main recordings in the 60s and 50s and 60s, and the sonics are pretty good, and they've remastered them on all the CDs to where the the piano doesn't sound quite as warm and tubby as it did on the LPs. But if you like Chopin, this is a bargain. I think you can still find this for about $26 for 8 CDs on Amazon. So well worth getting if you like Chopin's music. Okay, here's another double. And speaking of doubles, it's Brahms concerto for violin and cello, and it's called the Double Concerto. And that was an accidental segue on my part. But you can find a lot of talented people playing this. This one has Isaac Stern playing violin, Leonard Rose on cello, and the famous Philadelphia Orchestra playing with Eugene Normandy conducting. This is a Sony Essential Classic, so this would have originally come out on Columbia Records. But this is a wonderful piece. It's very melodic and romantic. It is of the Romantic era. Brahms was probably the what's the word I want to say? He was the most qualified to assume the mantle that Beethoven left behind when he died. Brahms, his pieces have almost approached Beethoven's in their majesty and melodicness. Anyway, this is another living stereo SACD of the Brahms Double Concerto. This is with Jascha Heifetz, the famous violinist, playing the piece, along with some other pieces by Bach and Mozart. But again, the sonics on the SACD are very good. Okay, Tchaikovsky is most famous for his ballet music. The ballet pretty much came into its own in Russia in the late 1800s, and Tchaikovsky wrote a number of very memorable pieces. And they all have great melodies, some powerful movements in them. These are like suites of taken from the ballet music, because the actual ballet music, of course, is 2 hours long. But Tchaikovsky condensed them into like a little greatest hits package that was he called a suite from Swan Lake or Sleeping Beauty or Romeo and Juliet. My favorite is Swan Lake, probably because I grew up watching the classic Bela Lugosi Dracula, where that's the theme music as the credits roll. But Sleeping Beauty has a very famous piece about falling in love, which you've heard probably in Bugs Bunny. And Romeo and Juliet has the famous falling in love theme, pardon me, but it also has a very exciting, powerful theme for the sword fight. But anyway, good stuff. This is another laser light budget CD, but again, it's well done. This one's by the Berlin Radio Symphony. Scheherazade. Scheherazade is the story of the 1001 Nights, where the woman is telling stories to entertain her ruler. She's one of his many wives, and so the theme has Scheherazade. It's being expressed by a solo violin, and then there are all these major themes. There are several movements related to the story she tells. The most famous story from the 1001 Nights is Sinbad the Sailor, and that's the first bit here, which is the most famous. It's called The Sea in Sinbad's Ship, and it's just gorgeous. Rimsky-Korsakov is known as an instrumentalist, and the different tonal colors that he gets from the symphony is quite amazing. Anyway, this is a classic performance of a classic piece. It's Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony doing Scheherazade. It was originally on Living Stereo, RCA, which means you can get it now on the SACD version. But this is considered a classic. It's like Kind of Blue is a classic jazz album to get. This is a classic album to get. And we can't ignore Mozart. The man is probably number two behind Beethoven in terms of musical genius. I'm prejudiced, some will probably put him ahead, but his most famous piece is called Eine kleine Nachtmusik, or A Little Night Music, and has the famous theme that you hear in Amadeus. And this is again a budget disc. This is not a laser light, but it's somebody's budget line. And it's hard to mess up Mozart. You can probably buy anybody's recording of it, and as long as the sonics are good, you'll get a nice recording. But it's a wonderfully entertaining piece. Mozart, it's hard to go wrong with. You can just buy any of his symphonies and get something entertaining usually. Okay, we're going to jump ahead from Mozart in the 1700s to George Gershwin in the 1900s. So we've gone modern here. And Gershwin did an interesting thing. He was a man of his time, and he wanted to do something that was characteristically American. And so he wrote some classical pieces that were strongly influenced by jazz. And they're almost like jazz pieces for symphony. And the most famous one is Rhapsody in Blue, but he also did one called An American in Paris. And pretty much every orchestra and conductor has done it. I've chosen Leonard Bernstein because he was the head of the New York Philharmonic. They had a close relationship with Gershwin. Gershwin, I believe, lived in New York. But Bernstein is a Bernstein, not sure. I've heard it both ways. Very talented conductor. He used to have live shows on TV when I was growing up, and of course my mom would watch them. But he'd discuss the piece, and then the orchestra would play it. But Bernstein has a great understanding of Gershwin and the flow and the pace of the music. Bernstein himself is famous. He wrote the music for the famous musical West Side Story, which was like a modern musical version of Romeo and Juliet. Okay, Dvorak, again a romantic composer, late 1800s, early 1900s, but he did his last symphony, I believe it's the ninth, yes, Symphony Number 9, was written in America. He called it the New World Symphony, the Symphony from the New World, and it's got some wonderful melodies in it. It's just a great, strong piece. Again, this is a recording of Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and it's part of the Living Stereo CD, SACD series, so the sonics on it are quite good. But Dvorak's done a lot of beautiful symphonies. And last, we got a little quirky stuff here. Mussorgsky was this was written like early 1900s, I believe. Pictures at an Exhibition, bits, and it's not quite a symphony. I don't know what you'd call it, a tone poem, but they're a number of little pieces that are strung together where, each little piece is like describing a painting. And each painting has its own theme as you go through. But it's a neat piece. And then Night on Bald Mountain, you've probably heard it's a very dramatic, almost threatening sounding piece of music. But these are again Fritz Reiner, Chicago Symphony on Living Stereo SACD. Well, I could do a dozen others, but I'm not. I'm going to stop it right there. Hopefully, this gives you some ideas to go on if you're curious, classical curious. You may want to look into some of these. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you like this. Please like and subscribe. Have a great day.